I think there's three lanes where disagreements come in is not recognizing the lane that you're in. There's the first lane, which is indifferent kids. There's a middle lane, which is the reactive lane. The reactive lanes are kids that want to play baseball. They have some skill set. If it's a bell-shaped curve, they're right in the middle. They're competing, but they're reactionary. By that, I mean that they do as little as possible, or they can do more and they don't take the initiative. And then there's the third lane, and it's the lane that I try to push kids to. You want to put yourself in a situation that you get the best result. You have to be an autodidact. That means you have to be your own teacher. You have to be your own best teacher. So what is it that you have to do? You have to put yourself in a situation that you take the initiative.
It's 8:51. Good morning.
Good morning, dude.
We had some fun setting up in here. We're here at the Brooklyn Baseball Foundry here in Brooklyn, New York City. You know, we talk about adjustments. We talk about patience a lot in the game of baseball. Well, let me be the first to tell you, and then I'll let Jose take it, is we had to be patient with one another. We had to be patient with setting up, and we had to make real-time adjustments. But we're here. We have things set up. We're excited to be here. How are you feeling this morning?
I'm good. Dylan, trying to set this up at home and then coming here to set it up is two different things. I'm thinking that we were going to do this and it was going to be easy. And I did all these runs and everything. Dude, I wanted to hit my head against the desk. 100%. 100%. It's like, I'm a big planner. Oh, like right now, you don't understand what was going through my mind, just trying to stay regulated and stay cool. So could you imagine an 11 or 12-year-old trying, listening to me or here's another thing. Haven't you noticed that usually who is your first coach?
Probably yourself. I mean, you're spending time in your head. Your performance is at the top of your mind, the game that you want to play, like the other team, the competitor, all those things are happening.
But I think you recognize that later. But at first, the external influence is usually your dad.
Oh yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, my dad's my hero. He still is one of my biggest heroes. And, he taught me how to throw. He taught me how to play catch, taught me how to swing. And at some point, yeah, I think that decision had to be made where I had to,
Right?
let other people in and allow for my game to kind of evolve and let other people, as you say, different chefs teach me how to cook different ways.
I my biggest thing is whether it's baseball, whatever it is drawing lines. And so what is it that from your experience, when did your dad know that he had to take a step back?
Well, I played for my dad for a few different teams. He was really good at balancing, being a coach, but also understanding that he had a son on the team. Sometimes I had to, set the standard of work ethic because it would reflect bad on him as a coach. So there was some pressure there, but I think it was probably I started playing travel baseball at almost age 9, and the small town that I was born in, we had baseball, thankfully. But the level of baseball that I kind of graduated to, I needed to kind of seek out. So I ended up driving to bigger cities like Houston and stuff. So it was at that moment I think he understood, oh, okay, if he's going to continue on, I need to take a step back and just help provide the opportunity and maybe take a little bit of a foot off the gas as far as being the coach.
So you're 9, you're on a travel team. What do you think your dad's thought process in saying this coach is good for my kid, this coach isn't good for my kid?
Wow. I think, well, he still is. He's really good at understanding people kind of where they're at. I think it was a combination of, am I going to get an opportunity to grow as a player? Am I going to get an opportunity to grow as a person? And I think that if those values lined up with who the coach was, he would see it through. Now, there was probably moments where I maybe wanted to play for a certain team for maybe the measurables, maybe more wins, maybe more exposure, but he would set me aside and still let me make the decision but as a good father will do, kind of show me, kind of play devil's advocate, I guess is the best way to phrase that. And he would say, this is one lane, this is another lane. I'm going to let you choose. And then I would always ask, well, what do you think, Dad? And that was a conversation that we had ongoing throughout my career.
So I I know for me, I grew up without a dad. So a lot of the things that I learned through trial and error. I would go try out for a team. I would I would play, and then I would find out if the program was any good or if the team was any good at the level of competition. Then it got to a point that after I was 13, I'm speaking towards my baseball experience. I tried out for when I was 15. Pedro brought me down and I tried out for youth service, and youth service was merit based. It was, you paid little to no money. It's 180 degrees as to the monetized way that baseball is. It was merit based. I just had Kevin Baez. He was kind enough. I don't know if you know who Kevin Baez is. He played for the New York Mets, middle infielder, and he's Brooklyn legend. He used to pitch for Lafayette. He threw cheese. Pedro and him went against each other, and we beat Lafayette. This was in 84, 1980, beat him 1-0.
You talk about the New York baseball scene as someone who knows what they're talking about. You have 30 plus years in the New York baseball scene, which is another reason why I enjoy coaching with you, because here we are in New York. And as a coach, as a player, or no longer a player but as a coach, but also when I was a player, I like to surround myself with players and coaches who kind of knew more than me, one, but two, knew exactly where they were, which is you are that person. Let me ask you, as far as the Brooklyn and the Bronx baseball scene, the grit, it's New York. What can you talk about that in relation to kind of where I come from, where there's just an abundance of facilities, there's an abundance of high level teams, schools, travel teams, and then even in Puerto Rico, where it kind of evolved, where I played high school. What can you talk about the grit? Where is there some synergy and where is there some differences?
So one of the things I try to avoid retelling stories through nostalgia. Like I remember when I was playing, there was always the guys, oh, when we were playing, it was different, and I try to avoid that. But the baseball's been monetized. So one of the good things about when baseball wasn't monetized, there were so few options, and it's the equivalent of you having two universities and having so many candidates trying to get into the two top universities. So in New York at the time, the Bonnies were stronger. Youth service, 70-80% of the kids would come from the city. When I was playing,
And for
in
youth service, what age group is that?
this was our youth service was strong from 14 up. The same way Mel Zitter was famous for developing kids, it also came because he had guys like Richie Corbo developing the younger guys. And then in youth service, if you had a certain skill set, when I was 16, I was also playing for the 17, 18-year-olds.
So you played up.
You can play up. You can play up, but I was a lefty. I could hit. I couldn't run, but I can hit. And I was a lefty specialist. So now, and it's one of my pet peeves, but it's also, I have to have the ability to read the room. One of my pet peeves is people are missing the development component. With youth service, the first 4 weeks, it was mostly running. Mostly running. We would run for half an hour. We would work on the 60s. And if you didn't do that, you weeded yourself out. So Mel didn't care of money or anything. He wanted quality athletes. So that part, the endurance, the toughness, the grit. So we can do that because we had the better players of the city wanting to play for us.
Mm.
So if you didn't have that, today is different. Today, I'm sure there may be programs that do the same thing, maybe in the Cape Cod League. I don't know. But today is different. Today it's monetized. Today, if anything, everybody talks about, make sure your kid plays and everything. And that's right. But you also have to read into the competition. And are you putting your kid in a bubble, or are you putting your kid in a situation where is realistic? And I don't think there's a right answer. It depends. It's like some people like eating in a takeout restaurant that you can eat standing up. Some people like eating in a restaurant that they bring you your food. You have to know what you're signing up or signing into. One of the things I try to do, not to sound like I have contempt, is it's different times, and the choice is made early. You decide, like you were saying, like your dad would tell you the pros and cons. This team, you're going to be competing. This team, is development. I don't want to make it sound binary, but one team leans closer to everyone gets a trophy. Another team leans towards nothing is safe, nothing is secure. If you're not hitting, you're not playing. So
You talked about youth services. You talked about some coaches you had as a player, kind of what worked for you as a player. Bringing it in now, being a coach in the New York City baseball circuit, travel. We work together at a private school here in Brooklyn. What was something that you just weren't as aware of as a coach early on that you have more clarity on today in your everyday coaching process?
empathy, being able to communicate, understand that people don't see your intentions. Everybody has their own perspective. They see the world a certain way. They come with their own flaws, purities, and I think as a player and then as a younger coach, being, it's just iterations. Slightly insecure and and a little obtuse, but the most liberating thing for me has been embracing how truly insignificant I am, how little I know, and to frame things. Like, now I can coach anybody, I can work with anybody, because regardless of how they bring me their message, it's up to me to catch it right here and manage how I frame it internally. You can be a little gruff or anything. So at the beginning, and I'm fortunate because I played for a lot of good coaches that were flawed. Mel Zitter is phenomenal coach when it comes to developing, but there were certain things. Let's just say Mel would not be a good MC at a kid's 6-year-old birthday party.
Got it.
And so, but you see that, and he had the best intentions. And now, because now it's just reading the room. Like, for example, the travel team that I coach, I was brought in because the parents were told they needed a coach that was more disciplined. I was referred to someone that I coached their kid, and the the kid is a pedigree baseball player. So that parent is friends with one of the parents on the team, and he said, "Listen, your kids are ready for a coach like Jose." So when I came in, I had to read the room. So they gave me a group of kids, and there was some miscommunication. They gave me a group of kids, and they said, these kids are going to be on the team. And then you can pick certain kids. I say, I have no problem with that, but what I determine is playing time. So as long as I can determine playing time, I'll coach anybody, because then I can set my standards and so on. So when I did that, the only miscommunication, and it was, I'll own it because it's my team. There was one kid that his skills weren't there, but in the group that was coming in, and then the president of the organization I was representing, they had told me certain kids I couldn't cut. And in between that, there was this miscommunication, but this kid being on the team was a disservice. And I try to convey that to the parents, but I did it later than sooner. So, that kind of stuff. But drawing the line back to having a kid on a team, but if a kid's on a team that he's not going to play and his skill sets are not there, and then what makes it even harder is this is a great kid, wonderful kid, smart kid, phenomenal kid, but baseball wise, he wasn't going to benefit. And then since my job was to come in and show discipline and bring this team to another level, it was counterproductive. So that sort of
That brings me to another question. When you have a player like that in the travel circuit, loves the game, great kid, learning how to establish himself as a baseball player, is there a place for players like that? Even if they don't make this team, do you think in travel baseball that we have
100%. It's I think there's three lanes, and I think the where disagreements come in is not recognizing the lane that you're in. There's the first lane, which is indifferent kids. And I don't mean that in a negative, condescending way. They're just kids that rec ball. They want to play baseball. They want to have fun. The social piece, which is wonderful. Then there's a middle lane, which is the reactive lane. And most kids fall in that. The reactive lanes are kids that they want to play baseball. They have some skill set. They're if it's a bell-shaped curve, they're right in the middle. They're competing, but they're reactionary. By that I mean that they do as little as possible, or they can do more, and they don't take the initiative. Like these are the kids that they'll do lessons, they'll and there's nothing wrong with lessons. There's something to be said. And then there's the third lane, and it's the lane that I try to push kids to, or at least I explain all three lanes, is proactive, the unicorns, the kid that if you're following baseball and you want to put yourself in a situation that you're really competing to say play D1 or forget about D1 or playing pro baseball, you want to put yourself in a situation that you get the best result, you have to be an autodidact. That means you have to be your own teacher. You have to be your own best teacher. So what is it that you have to do? You have to put yourself in a situation that you take the initiative. I tell my kids on my team, when I work with you, it should be 15% of the amount of work that you're doing. So that, that's what the problem comes in is that if you have a indifferent kid thinking that the family thinking that why isn't he being gauged with the reactive kids or a reactive kid who thinks that they should get unicorn treatment and, the birth of the prima donna. So earlier in my age and being a youth service guy, I had little tolerance for that because all you do is just have the kids run. And in the conditioning, they would weed themselves out. But now I've learned you have to read the room. A lot of the times, how you hope things are and what really is, you have to be able to read the room and work within those constraints. Does that make sense to you?
yeah, I want to talk about like if these walls that we're here could talk. We're here at the Brooklyn Baseball Foundry in Brooklyn. Well, we were both here last night doing some work. I'll be here later this evening doing some work. So
I love this place.
I do too. If these walls could talk in terms of what you just, articulated for us, three lanes, what would these walls say?
I think that you have everything here. You have the dad that comes in that's working with his kid and he's doing lessons. You have the high school coach. We're fortunate. Our guy, the head coach at the program that we're at, Wayne Roberts, he's younger than me, but he's a baseball player and he gets it. And it's funny because he's younger than me, but his temperament sometimes I'm learning from him. He has like this laid back demeanor. So here you have everything going on. I think you look at the weights and you'll have someone that comes in and it's there for them if you're of the right age and because weight training is such a big piece of baseball now. It has to be something that you have to know what you're doing, but it's such a big piece. But you'll see a kid that they become curious and you associate the weight training with baseball. Another thing is I do hitting lessons here with my travel team. And when I'm running my practice, I am very efficient and I micromanage the time. You see processes. Sometimes I'll turn around and I see other processes that are not as efficient. It's just, but it doesn't mean that that's bad as long as some people are getting work and whatnot. I think the spaces like this, they're a window to see what other people and other coaches and other players are doing. I think that it should be something that's utilized. It should be something that you should try to make the most of it.
Absolutely. I myself, I mean, I think there's moments in this room that we have here in Brooklyn that if these walls could talk, you talk about processes. I think that there's a lot of conversations having amongst players, coaches to players that are always kind of one deepening or lengthening these processes, not in a way that it's taking more time, but deepening and more like I'm discovering the intention behind this process, and then also sharing. I think that's a big thing about what's happening here at the Brooklyn Baseball Founders. There's a lot of sharing of knowledge, all for the purpose to develop the players in the Brooklyn and tri-state area.
Let me ask you something.
Yeah.
With weight training, there's a lot of schools of thought. I was one of my parents sort of reprimanded me because I was having his kid do medicine balls and it's 12 years old. And but the dad is candid and his first concern was he was like, I just don't want my kid to get hurt.
Sure.
But I get it. But I also, one of the things I tell my 12-year-olds not to be heroes. And and the parents get it. Sometimes the 12-year-olds, they're not forthcoming and they don't communicate. So for example, the parents on my travel team, I have 12 youth. What can you say about weight training? What are avoidable things? Or better yet, what's the indifferent, reactive, and proactive kids? Explain the three lanes, if you don't mind.
I think the indifferent kid is, the weights are probably not something that's even something they're aware of. I don't think that that's something that they're interested in. Not to say they can't gather or gain interest. The middle lane, they're going to be more curious, but also they're going to put up maybe a boundary or a wall of maybe I don't need that. That's not a part of my game. That's not a part of my process. I'm having success doing what I'm doing. And then there's the third who's already either come from that middle lane to the third lane, or they've kind of been there and they're incorporating little things here and there, depending on the age range. For a 12U kid, you want to be smart, right? You don't want to give a kid that's continuing to grow, their bones are continuing to develop. They're going to catch growth spurts, right? You don't want to hurt a kid. So I always preach bands. We have a lot of resistance bands here, and bands always before barbells and heavier weights. That's going to be something that allows a kid to become familiar with a certain movement that's going to be synergetic to baseball. We hinge a lot in baseball. So, you'll see a lot of trap dead bar deadlifting from, guys that are going Division I or in college, because you hinge a lot. When you find an athletic position. You use your legs a lot in baseball. You're putting things into the ground via your body weight. So being able to brace with the core is something that you have to teach a kid. And that comes from breath, which, as you know, if we're not breathing, we're not living, we're not making decisions, we're not living in clarity. So I think you can incorporate breath work and really teach a kid how to brace. You can do that with no weights. And it's hard. It's hard to sit still, especially in 2026. We have technology and cell phones and a lot of content and a lot of information that we don't really know which one's for us or which one's not for us, but just simplifying it even just to how do we breathe today? How can we bring that? And that happens in the weight room without the baseballs moving, and then bring that to my T work. But I think weight training, as a kid's developing, they go hand in hand. And it's not just preseason, right? There's a preseason program, there's an off-season program, and there's an in-season program to follow. I mean, guys are doing it all the way at the major league level. Right now, we're in spring training. I was just last Saturday, there was a kid that I was working with, a 12U kid, asking questions like, "Hey, coach, why is Juan Soto only getting 2 at bats?" Because his point of view is, I would like to see Juan Soto get 4 at bats. And I said, there's a lot that's happening underneath that tunnel that
It's a marathon.
we don't know what's happening. We don't know
Marathon. It's not a sprint.
we don't know the formed running work that he's done, or if he's carried kettlebells already that day, or what he's doing to create shoulder stability so he can continue to hold these positions over the course of a 162 game season, right? And then hopefully they keep playing into October. So everyone's process is going to be fine tuned, but it does kind of center around preparation, mobility, weight training, and then obviously bringing that into your game of mechanics.
I often get parents telling me my son got invited to a showcase. This happens more at 15, but it's starting to happen at 12. And I laugh because, I mean, if you have the budget that money is not an object, by all means. If anything, I'm looking to get adopted. But if you have a budget and you want to be efficient, I think first, the physical side of it, being like understanding a program and movement and development to build your body to get to the measurables. And now these are options. You know, you can get a trainer to do these isolation drills, put together a program. I remember because youth service, we produced a bunch of players that went on to play D1, play professional baseball. But the focus wasn't on perfect game. The focus wasn't on, I need to make it to a showcase. The focus was, what's your 60? How fast is your 60? What are you doing for your 60? Everybody, if you don't know the famous story of Manny Ramirez, when Manny was the 13th pick the year he got drafted in the first round, Manny did a 660. And he worked for that. He used to run up this hill, do all these drills and everything. I think that there's a point in baseball that yes, you can get lessons, but the kids have to do the work.
Sure. That brings me to a question I have about, we talk about measurables, those are the things that we can see on the field, the numbers that hits the radar gun, the stopwatch, the ball leaving the bat with the pop, all these things that are great for the game that we as coaches and players love to have conversations about. But what about the moments that we don't see? What about the development, that happens mentally? What about the invisible moments? Well, can you speak on those?
Oh, easily. It's one simple question, and it's a question that it's my guiding light. And if I can get players to always ask themselves either before they talk or before they do anything, how do I get better at the things I don't think I'm bad at? Because if you get to a point, and this is me talking to young me when I was coaching and everything, sometimes good intentions, but narrow perspective is counterproductive. So just emotional intelligence, one of the things that gravitated me to hanging out with you, and if anything that I was like, yeah, I'll do this podcast with you, is when you were talking about Puerto Rico, your emotional maturity, and how you coming from Texas, you was like, I'm disciplined. My family is like this. We have this Texas work ethic, but this work ethic, then this is life. This is life. And for me, what I've learned and to let go is not everyone drinks the Kool-Aid as much. And it's understanding the lanes. And so to answer your question, I think baseball affords you the opportunity to have emotional intelligence. Like right now, something real off topic. My older brother and me, we have totally different perspectives when it comes to politics. But I still love my brother.
Sure.
And where did I get that? I got that from baseball. I would play on a team. There were kids from all walks of life. And at first, you first play with your group, but as you're exposed to other people and different experiences, and you get empathy. You get empathy. So
Yeah, I'm glad you say that, because I think that's part of the human condition. The human connection is how we communicate and how we can empathize with others, especially as you know, when you're on a team, that's your teammates. You're going to spend a lot of time with these people on the field. You're going to travel with these people. You're going to be in different cities, maybe different states, and maybe even another country playing this game. But when the game is gone, we're still just human beings communicating with one another, and we have to practice patience. We have to practice active listening. We have to practice empathy. So I'm glad you brought that up and bring that back to what we're doing here.
speaking about empathy, where we're fortunate. The guy that brought me to youth service and I've already put out a couple of videos of Pedro, and Pedro agreed he's going to be joining us in the podcast regularly. And he's far from perfect, but he's honest. He's far from perfect. We went to high school together, and he's going to be generous with his time. He does lessons. He's in Texas. He does lessons, and loves the game. And this is someone, and because, like, again, I said, I didn't grow up with my old man. Pedro's dad was a major leaguer, but Pedro, when he was 13, 14, he was here without his dad, and he taught himself baseball. So he has this different perspective, and he's going to be helping us out. He's going to be doing the bullpen segment. And also, since we've never done this, we haven't. We want it to be organic, like we always talk about. If we can allow people into our processes, what we're talking about, like right off the top of my head, for the next podcast, I'm thinking about, what advice do you give dads that are coaching? Because sometimes, like, I'm impressed with some dad coaches that I'm like, wow,
Yeah.
you could tell this guy was on YouTube. This guy's been Googling, he's been talking. But then there are other dad coaches. So I think the next podcast, I want to touch on that. Like, when does the do's and don'ts of coaching your kid on the team, and the little things that you can do to improve your experience. Does that make sense? Do you think
Totally.
people be interested in that?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of people, dads, parents, who want to help their kids in any way they can while they're still very much part of the experience. And that's a gift. So I think that would be a great topic of conversation.
Another thing that I'll give you an example. When you played were the high schools in Texas had relationships with the travel programs? Was that a common occurrence, that a travel program? I know. So I went to Georgia and Florida for a month in 2010 with a team I took down there, and we played against high schools, but it was high schools that had a travel program, and we played them in the summer. Is that a common thing in Texas?
Yes. I mean, when I moved when I was 14 to go to high school in Puerto Rico, but it was very much already established there, where you had travel baseball coaches that would work with different high schools. Sometimes it was only 3 to 4 players for a school, but there'd be 3 to 4 kids from one high school. They'd all be kind of in the same district, the same area. But it totally is probably even blossomed and involved even more. I think that some of the high school baseball coaches in Texas probably are in that circuit as well, because they want to get their players who have goals to play at the next level, college baseball. They want to be there in the process of that in the summer, as much as the rules can allow. Obviously, there's probably rules changes that I'm not as aware of. So there might be some things that high school coaches can't do that other coaches can. And they probably have either relationships with those coaches that can coach them if they can't coach them themselves, but they're definitely having baseball conversations about their players for the development and for people to want to play at the highest level. And as you know, in Texas, we have a lot of schools, a lot of high schools. Travel baseball, I think, makes up for a large portion of the market of travel baseball as far as Texas goes, and as far as the United States goes. In the state, we will probably produce a handful of draft picks in relation to the rest of the United States, because there's a lot more players there. A lot of them will come from the state of Texas. Even if they went and got drafted out of Florida, LSU, or Tennessee, or Vanderbilt, even
Home is Texas.
it'll always be because of the culture there, I think, that we've kind of built. And it goes back to even some of the hardest working people that I've met. They come from an area not because of Texas or Florida or whatever. I think a lot of it is the weather. And you don't think about it. You have access to these facilities. And that's something I want to bring back here to the Baseball Foundry. We have a facility here. Just because the weather is about to be good in the next couple of weeks. Thankfully, we're here. Baseball season's right there. We can hear it knocking on the door. But you still have resources, and back to that lane 2, lane 3 player, it's like, which lane are you in and what can you do? How can I use the resources I have available? If I have the work ethic, great. Now go apply it. Go find a process. Go find some players who are doing something, whether it just be, some pickups or some wall drills or some med ball slams or something to get your baseball game advanced, further along.
It's funny because I came across this article that in New York, the exact opposite is happening. I mean, there are outliers. I know the coach, the guy that was the head of, he's the AD at John Jay. Now he's going to be the head baseball coach at Kingsborough Community College, Coach Friedman. He does a good job at having relationships with travel organizations, and some of his guys, some of his staff, they belong to these travel organizations, but there's this disconnect with a lot of high schools that have these fields, and the fields go underutilized. The
Okay.
field, we're in the Northeast, it's cold, there's in the city, fields are scarce, and there's like this disconnect. And the reason that people are given, and I get it because I'm a business person, is liability. It's always liability issues. You have to have insurance, and the school don't want to foot the bill. And also the schools have unions. What I'm finding out is if there's someone using the field, there has to be someone present. If someone's using the inside, the custodian has to be there, or there has to be a security guard. It's because there's certain things that are built in, and these are added expenses. So I think that these are conversations, and for people when they're talking about public monies and monies for community, it'd be nice for that to be addressed. So I think for the next, these are the things we want to talk about. I want to address that. And also, anybody, please comment, DM us through Instagram, questions, anything, any topic. If there's any tea in your team, we won't use names or pictures, but we can create hypotheticals, and then this way we can gain perspective. And maybe it's something that I learned from that. But I know another thing is kids have to warm up properly. That's the last thing I'm going to say.
No, I think especially as we approach closer to the season, we're still very much in that middle end of off-season, preseason. I think this is the time as players, as coaches, even more importantly, we're all excited. We want to go full speed. The weather's about to get better. We're about to start hitting the fields. I think it's still about how do we stay grounded? How do we warm up our body to move up, down, side to side as fast as possible? So whenever we can go full speed, we mitigate the risk of injury because it's a short season because of the weather constraints we have, but we want to enjoy the season. I think that's a good spot to end on today. We're here. My name is Dylan Kane, your host of The Developmental Gap. This is my co-host, Jose Franco. We're excited to see you guys on the next episode where we'll be continuing to have difficult but honest conversations around high school baseball, travel baseball, and some really fun characters on the way to tell some fun stories and even get a larger perspective from a Major League Baseball perspective, minds that have been around the game, been in clubhouses that, I think kids will be interested to hear some funny stories about and learn and grow. So we look
Yeah,
forward to seeing you. You got anything else to end on?
just stretch. People should be throwing already, just having catches. If you're 12-year-old, stop throwing curveballs. Just throw strikes.
Ooh.
Three things you need. You need defense, you need strikes, and you need trust. Those three things, that's the basic principle to having a good baseball team. To be continued. See you next time.
All right, guys. Take care.